Hey folks, we had a lot of questions about the best way to map out workflow. A lot of people kind of conceptually get it, but you know, sometimes it's a little bit harder based on how you set it up to do things like identify bottlenecks or try to figure out how to increase throughput or see where your money's locked. So your inventory, where the money owed is locked in. So I'm going to show you guys how to do an exercise. We just call it the sticky note exercise that we did way back when in order to map out our workflows. And it's changed over time, and that'll happen, but I'm going to walk you through that. So need a couple things. I need a couple pads of sticky notes, ideally different colors, bunch of different colors. And you'll see why it just sometimes makes it a little bit easier when you look at the board to see how that works. And then you're going to need quite a few Sharpies. Thick Sharpie, you want to be able to see what you're writing on these cards pretty easily when you're looking at your board. All right, so very next thing, and again, you can use a wall if you want for this. I've got a whiteboard. It's honestly not big enough. If you have a big whiteboard, that's going to be great. Otherwise, just put them on the wall and then maybe put one note at the very beginning, says, hey, this is for paralegal support staff. This is for, phone/support staff, for paralegals, and then for attorneys. So we're going to want to do that. So in order for us to do that, I've got to write everything up here, which I forgot. So we're going to put paralegals here underneath phone support staff. And then we're going to put attorneys here at the bottom. All right, and remind me to invest in a better mic and bigger markers. All right, so the very next thing is we're going to want to do something called create swim lanes. So swim lane is basically who is responsible for tasks, and it's just a way of visually organizing them. So we're going to put a line between each of those, and that should give us enough room to do that. All right, I've taken the liberty of printing out some tasks that I remember from working with criminal work way back when. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show what your staff is going to do as they go through this process. They're going to write down every little task they do. So, don't say scan every document after you print it out, but, you get it, how that may be done, especially if different people are doing those tasks or there's some logical separation between them. All right. So what we're going to also do is we're going to want staff to put them in relative chronological order. If it's happening towards the beginning of the case, put it towards the front here. If it's going to happen at the very end, towards the end of the case, put it at the end, and everywhere in between. And then at the end, we're going to clean it up a little bit. All right, so let me go through these. One task we have is closed case. Maybe people do a bunch of different stuff. Maybe they file things. Maybe they send a letter to the client. So that's what we're going to do. Happens at the very end. We're going to put it at the end. We're going to say support staff does that. So it's going to go in that support staff swim lane. Let's see, mail subpoena. You'll see that is a little different than something else. We'll say mailing subpoenas happens here relatively early in the case. Same with mailing a notice of appearance. And let's say drafting pretrial motions happens before the trial. Drafting, let's say the attorneys do this part. So we're going to stick that at the bottom. Let's see, call for update. We're just going to say at the pretrial stage, we're going to update the client on how it's going. So we'll put that there. Let's see, we're going to draft subpoena for dash cam. A little bit different than mailing. Let's stick that right there. Same thing, drafting notice of appearance. For whatever reason, let's say paralegals do this. Some of them I'm assuming could be done by support staff. Print background check. Again, I'm getting relatively nuanced here. Probably a couple too many sticky notes, but hopefully this gives an idea. Print pattern jury instructions. Let's say that is right before the case starts. Let's see, drafting a brief. See, that's the appeals phase. So let's say we're going to do that right here. We're going to draft a brief. Let's see, we're going to research for the appeal. Generally, folks are going to do these two at the same time. So this is a good example of, hey, we probably don't need to research and draft together. So we're going to kill that. Print exhibit, and you will have this conversation as you go through here. You know, multiple people may say the same thing different ways. So you'll pick one, just throw the other one on the ground if you want to be demonstrative. Print exhibits, again, let's put that right here in print. So this is like the day of trial, for instance. And then call for preliminary information. Let's say that's happening here at the very beginning. All right. So you see, attorneys don't have a lot. They have these two. Let's say they might have a couple extra things for pretrial. We'll go into that. Like, I'm not going to say it right. Voir dire questions, drafting, cross-examination questions, whatever. All that stuff would go there too. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put them in logical order. So let's say all this stuff needs to be done before we can move on to the next group of tasks. You may also want to slightly separate that based on who's doing what. So for instance, phone support staff, paralegals can't do their drafting until that preliminary call has been done. Mailing cannot be done until the paralegals have drafted everything. Same for draft pretrial motions. There's probably gonna be some steps in here that, hey, we can't do that until we get everything else done. All right. So now this is where we actually start getting those categories. And again, try to do it separate based on who's going to be doing it. Maybe there's going to be some things that can be done in parallel, but the way we're going to look at this is we want to have a specific group responsible for each column. All right, so then we're going to add the columns, and these are your phases. So there's a line. That has to be done before these tasks can be done by the paralegal. I want to do that. Let's say we can't mail things till they've been drafted. Fly that down. We have all our mailing going out of one of the offices. Makes it a lot easier to put return addresses and all that good stuff on there. Also, just putting all the work in the same place just works for us. So we have mailing as a separate group. You could have paralegals do that as well. Also, I know I keep coming up with different things. Maybe you still, even if paralegals are doing 3 different things, if they are logically in a different order, you probably still want to put them in a separate column. And part of the reason for that is that may be a task that you move to your support staff, or you decide the attorney should do it. So what that does is it gives you that flexibility later, reassign, and determine who is the least compensated person that can complete that task. So the owner is wearing, the $10,000 an hour hat instead of the $10 an hour hat. Okay, so we're gonna draw these lines. Since these things have to be done around the same time, they call for update right there. Drafting or printing. We're gonna start getting into the appeals stage, and then finally closing the case. So we're just gonna give these some general names at this point. So call for preliminary info. Let's just call that collect info. And these are going to be basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Call for preliminary info, collect information. Then we're going to have, let's say, draft pretrial discovery or something like that. Pretrial discovery drafting. There. Mail pretrial discovery. That would be one. Call for update. That could be one. You may put that somewhere else, but let's say post filing, call or something like that, right? We have, for instance, in data law, we have something called welcome call and then initial case review by an attorney. So those happen at the very beginning. So those are kind of things like this. Let's say print pattern jury instructions, print exhibits, pretrial prep, call that instead of pretrial drafting. So that would come next. Let's see, draft brief. We start getting to these appeal stage drafting, and then close case would be the final one. So that is more or less how you're going to want to do it. And then, like you saw me do, move some stuff around, decide who's going to be doing what. It's a good exercise to go through for that reason anyway, to say, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that task, Rusty. You should have Sam do it. And then we give that to Sam from then on. Okay. Questions, concerns, please send them our way. Otherwise, try to go through this if you are having trouble. Thanks.